And for our final session of the day, I would like to welcome Eran Livni, Senior Director of Product Management and Remediation at Qualys, to the stage. Eran will be taking us through a session on proactive risk mitigation through IT and security alignment. Now, you'll want to stay tuned to the end of this, as he'll be debuting some very exciting new developments from Qualys. So stay tuned, everyone. No turning away. Keep those eyes glued to the screen. Welcome onto the stage, Eran.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eran. I'm Senior Director here for Product Management. My responsibility is our remediation, so everything that we can help you fix vulnerabilities that we find. And in this presentation, I'll walk you through proactive risk mitigation through IT and security alignment, how we can help you, or what are the challenges, how we can help you improve your remediation when we all know that the security team are responsible for finding the risk, and completely different team, your remediation and IT teams, are the ones that are responsible actually to make those fixes. And when we look at a lot of data that we collect, of course, everything anonymously, we can see there is a big problem in the market. There's a big problem from the time a vulnerability is released until it is remediated or mitigated. And how can we be more efficient? How can those teams talk together? I like to start with this slide, just to show how other frameworks address the solution. So, National Cybersecurity Center, NCSC, is a UK agency that is recommending to the UK market, but I think it's really important because everybody can learn from their finding. And they recently released a guidance for vulnerability management, and their first thing on their guidance is what is emphasized here: put in place a policy to update by default. They're actually very, very forceful. And if I go to the next slide, you'll see the green bar is the recommendation. So the NCSC says 5 days. If you have any internet-facing devices, make sure it's patched after 5 days. Okay. If in other devices, operation system, and application, 7 days is what they highly recommend. Now, what our research team did, they actually look at the anonymous data and figure out how are, on average, customers, specifically in this region, right, in the UK, are actually doing compared to the recommendation. And you can see that just looking at from a UK perspective, but I can guarantee it will be the same across the globe. So 17 days on average it takes instead of 5 days, and 15 days on average instead of 7 days for the operation system and application. So it's not just that we believe there is a problem, there is actually a problem. One of the core things that the NCSC say is, and I would like to read you this quote: a vulnerability management process shouldn't exist in isolation. It is a cross-cutting effort and involves not just those working in IT operation, but also cybersecurity and risk teams. And I think that summarized the entire problem. The problem is, as I said in the beginning, we have a great security team, great tools to help us analyze and find those vulnerabilities, prioritize them. But then we have to it's basically we have to go through a big gap or a big chasm between the security team and the team that is actually responsible for making those changes, IT and remediation teams. And those teams are not usually part of security. Those teams usually use completely different tools, completely different processes. So communication is hard. And the goal for those teams, IT operational risk and remediation teams, their goal is to make sure that the business continue running. So their goal is making sure there's no downtime, there's no outages. And as we all know, every change can cause an outage, right? And recently we saw what happened with CrowdStrike. All those teams, justifiably so, are very worried about all those patches, all those changes. So they're not in a hurry to make those changes. And what I would like to go with you is how we can make it better, how we can make this process much better, and how efficiently and tooling and processes are a great way to achieve it. So let's start with the biggest elephant in the room, right? The fear of a downtime. If you think about it, if there was a magic button that can just say, I found a vulnerability, automatically I'm going to patch it regardless of where the vulnerability is found on, Even if it's a mission critical, I'm just going to patch it. I'm not fearing of any downtime, never any patch in the history crashed something. We will not have a vulnerability management problem. But that's not the fact. The fact is there's always downtimes. There's always stories about things that outages because of a change, and there is a huge fear of a downtime. Now, let's look at the simple logic. The more open vulnerabilities you guys have, the more patches you need to deploy to fix them, right? A vulnerability patch, you need more patches. Every patch introduced a risk of an outage, some kind of another, which means the more open vulnerabilities you have, the more patches you have, so you'll have more chance for an outage. So the first thing that we always like to tell our customer, prioritize, prioritize, prioritize. Focus on the vulnerability that are more important. If you focus on the vulnerability that are more important, you'll have to focus on less patching, less changes, which means by definition, less chances for an outage. And if you look at our true risk algorithm, and that's just a slide that I like to show, if you look at our true risk algorithm, you'll see that on our true risk, just an example, right? If you look at all the CVEs that were released, CVSS, if you only look at CVSS on the critical and high, it's 52% of those. If you look at our true risk, actually we found that 93% of those CVSS critical and high are false positive. Only 7% are part of true risk. So by definition, we are analyzing, and our additional inputs into true risk allows us to give you a more accurate way to prioritize. And the key here in this context, focus on the right vulnerabilities to remediate. So now instead of fixing 1 million vulnerabilities, we have to fix a much smaller subset to be more efficient. Now let's talk about the next thing. Let's talk about smart automation. How we can actually use or address the vulnerabilities that are left after our prioritization, and how can we efficiently address them working with IT. So the first thing that you have to remember, once you prioritize, you will find those low-hanging fruits. And this is just an example, right? The Chrome, the Firefox, the Adobe, the iTunes, the VLCs. Those are easy to fix. Those should not have any, they're not running on the kernel. Let's take an example. Let's take iTunes as an example. Let's say worst case scenario. You go ahead and patch iTunes and you do not test anything. You just, every time there's a new iTunes patch, go ahead and deploy to all your assets in one go. No testing whatsoever. What worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is because iTunes is an application, it doesn't connect to kernel. Worst case, the user will double click on the application and the application will not work. So what can happen to the business? Somebody will not be able to listen to music. Now, if you're in a media business and you use iTunes as your tool to make money, of course don't patch it automatically. For most of us that use iTunes to listen to our Apple Music library, patching it, if this is one of your top priority, again, we're not going to patch it just to patch it. But if we know those are the vulnerabilities that are most important in our environment, yes, let's patch it all the time, because we're going to get rid of those vulnerabilities automatically, and our operational risk, so the risk for an outage or downtime, is almost non-existent. So we can be much more forceful, and we can apply those in a much higher cadence. So the first thing, as I said, automate the low-hanging fruit. Okay, the product that introduced the less risk. My recommendation to you guys, and I'll show in a demo later on, security team should work with the remediation team. Specifically in those cases, those are desktop and laptop, so the endpoint team, right? Work with them, see those results, look at your report, seeing which vulnerabilities and which product are prioritized as the one that caused the most risk, and then create those automation based on IT input. IT will know what is the risk of iTunes. IT will know what is the risk of deploying VLC, Chrome, Firefox, Adobe Reader, all those things. Work with them, build those automation. It will be a huge time saver and a very important way to reduce the risk. As I said, focus on the high risk, high reward, the one that if you deploy them, you're going to reduce the most risk and you get the most reward because there's less chances of minimum chances of something breaking. There's one more advice for more advanced customers. You can also automate based on specific risk. For example, if you're a government, if you're in a federal market in the US, and there is the CISA requirement, and the CISA requirement is if there's a vulnerability in the KEV list, in the CISA KEV list, you have to patch it in a specific time. You can build automation that says, if I see a vulnerability from the CISA KEV, automatically go ahead and patch it. Of course, you're not going to do it on production environment. You can do it on desktop easily. Okay, so this is one level up. We are actually automating based on specific risk. If I have a ransomware related vulnerability, automatically go ahead and patch it. If I have a CISA KEV vulnerability, automatically go ahead and patch it on my desktop only in the US. Of course, you can do those kind of pinpointing and be more specific. So now we automated the low-hanging fruits as much as possible. We prioritized and now we automated. But there's still a lot of friction between security and IT, and it's all about communication. So automation removed a lot of this friction because IT doesn't have to do anything, right? Everything is automated, take care of them. IT knows nothing will break. So that's done. But what about the rest? So first of all, very important thing. There's a lot of manual work that your IT and the remediation team has to do to fix a vulnerability. Because very important to understand, a vulnerability is not a patch, it's not a one-to-one, and I'll show an example in the next slide. It's not a one-to-one ratio. So when the security team prioritize vulnerabilities and find those vulnerabilities and send them over to IT, either through a ticket or Excel or whatever you guys do, the IT team needs to do the research and go to the Microsoft KB or the Google KB or whatever and find the actual files that they need to install and how to install it. And they have different tools on doing it. But that takes time and an effort, and that shouldn't be the work of your IT guys. What they should do is decide how to deploy it, when to deploy it, and be able to test and verify. So smart strategy will be to do that for IT, meaning to prepare everything for IT. So we build those list of vulnerability that we want to fix, and let the product, because the data is there, we need to understand what are the vulnerability, what is including with those vulnerabilities, and how to fix them. That can be done by a product. Let the product map those vulnerabilities to what needed to be done to fix it, and package everything for you. So IT doesn't have to go and package things and prepare things and understand what registry key they need to make and how to make the registry key and how to package and prepare a Google Chrome update. All those things are just time wasted. Make the product do it for you. Okay? Give IT the accurate list of patches, accurate list of configuration changes, because then you're going to gain a lot of trust from IT. Because think about it, if you tell IT, hey, go ahead and do all those things, and IT spend too much time, and then a lot of those things are false positive, you spend a lot of time for IT. They will not like you for that. Make sure that you focus on the right thing, you get IT attention, and IT will also be much more efficient. And let me give you an example why why vulnerability and patch are not one thing. Print Nightmare is a great example. If you use SCCM or any other tool to patch, even Qualys to patch, right? If you use to patch and you patch the latest, you deploy the Microsoft patch for that, great, it will be deployed. The Qualys scanner will still tell you that you're vulnerable. Why? Because the Print Nightmare is a vulnerability, it's not a patch. And to solve the vulnerability risk, you need to make a registry key change and to deploy the patch. That's how Microsoft defined it. So if your IT team is living in their own, universe and just using SCCM or any other tool to deploy and fix Microsoft, Qualys will still find those vulnerability, and there's a mismatch. And now there's a blame game that we all know about, right? Why Qualys is right, SCCM is right, who is right? And the answer is both are right. SCCM is right because SCCM deployed the patch and he did his job, and Qualys is right because the risk is still there. But how much time we lost? How much communication time we lost? Why? Today's product can do it for you. Use this capability and let us tell you what are the right actions that you need to solve the vulnerability itself. Now let's go to the next phase, separation of duty. Unfortunately, with most customers, legacy or whatever you want to call it, or maybe not unfortunately, depend on your organization, but there is a separation of duty. IT team and the remediation team are the ones that are allowed to make changes and deploy patches. Security team are the ones that analyze the environment, prioritize it, and decide on the order of fixing. Okay, so we need to make sure that we honor that, and we need to make sure that we honor it based on different organization and different ways of approaching it. But, and I want to emphasize, a good solution, and of course I'm a little bit biased, but the Qualys solution fully honors that and allow the security team to use the tools that they need to prioritize and find the right vulnerabilities, and then complete separation. Allow the IT team to be the one that click this deploy button and make sure that they can test and approve and deploy, and if needed, they can even roll back. Okay. Now, what I'm going to show you in a demo is you can also add automation even when you need all this process of testing, approving, deploying, right? What we call rings. You can start with one environment and then, or one test environment, and go automatically to more. The more automation you add, the less work both teams will have to deal with. And with that, let me stop here and just go and show you a quick demo of the Qualys product and understand how we took all those challenges and implemented it into the product. And one thing to remember, because the Qualys product is using the same agent across the board, if you guys are Qualys customers and if you guys are using our agent on the asset, you already have remediation and patch management capabilities on your agent. It's just for you to use it or not, but it's there. You don't need to install anything. Okay, so let me start a demo. What I want to do is, first of all, show you something very simple, and then we can go something a little bit more complicated. So as you can see, Qualys support Windows, Linux, Mac, third-party application, as well as OS applications, as easy as selecting those and actually creating a job to deploy them, test them, and deploy them to production environment. It's really easy, very straightforward. But we talked about prioritization and we talked about automation. So with this specific report, we can help you. You can see the left side is product that are discovered in the environment. Right side is how many vulnerabilities those have. Why it's so important? Because remember that the first thing that we said is we don't want to automate patching for everything, because the more patches we deploy, the more chances of something will not work. So we want to focus on the patches that actually makes more sense, that will reduce the most risk. So we can do it in two ways. First of all, use this report. This report literally ranks the product that if you automate, you will reduce the most risk. In this case, it will be Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Wireshark, even Java. Now, we don't want to automate Java. If we automate Java, very good likelihood something will break. Same with Tomcat. But for most organization, you probably can automate Chrome, Edge, Firefox, and Wireshark, and probably the Adobe Reader or Foxit Reader that this organization has. In order to automate it, so you know what, let me go back. First, prioritize. Find the one that you want to focus on, that you know that will be the best, you'll get the best result with the minimum chances of breakage. So I'm going to select those products. Let's say I want to do those 4, and I'm going to create a job. And I'm basically creating an automation job so you can see how easy it is. I'm targeting my asset, my desktop assets here, desktop and laptop. You can see the system knows how to find those products automatically for you. Everything is packaged and ready to go, meaning there's no configuration needed. There's nothing you need to do. It's ready. As soon as the agent get the command, it will install those patches for you. You don't need to do anything else. And you can see I can schedule this thing to start to run on a regular basis. So I can say, let's do it twice a week on Sunday and Wednesday. And every Sunday and Wednesday at 11:29, we're going to make sure all your assets, desktop, laptop assets, are fully patched for those products that I've selected. And if you're telling to yourself, but we have Chrome set to auto update, that is great. Continue setting it to auto update. What we're doing here, we are enforcing the patch, because the auto update you cannot control. You don't know if it's installed or not. We are enforcing the patch, and we will not double install. So if auto update got there before us, we will not install anything. Nothing will happen to this asset. If auto update didn't work, we will go in and make sure it is up to date. Okay, so it's a very, very powerful way to make sure everything is up to date. Second thing that I want to show you is, let's look at risk and patches together. Many solutions shows you, if you deploy a patch, how many CVEs or how many CVSS you're going to lose, right? And we talked about the importance of the right prioritization. TrueRisk is an example. What you see here is a report that helps you prioritize patches based on how much risk they're going to remove right now. If I deploy Qualys, Google Chrome version, this specific version to this environment right now, I'm gonna remove the most risk. It's really, really important to understand. Okay, so if I can only patch one patch during the next day, this is the patch I want to deploy, because we know as a fact it will reduce the most risk. And again, this correlation, we're trying to focus on risk and not just on patch management. What do I need to do to reduce the most risk? This is my core question. Because remember, we don't want just to patch everything. We want to, but probably we don't want to because of the risk of a downtime, right? So here we pinpoint and we're focused on the one that makes more sense and will reduce the most risk for us. One more thing that I want to show you is automation. So let's talk a little bit about automation. I'll do a quick demo with Patch Tuesday. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create rings so we can test. So first Patch Tuesday, what I'm going to do, I'm going to focus on my test tags. Okay, so I'm going to focus on devices in my test environment. So I'm going to test, in other words, before I deploy to production. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create a job that says vendor equal Microsoft, and we can say is security true. So let's focus only on security patches. So the system will find the latest Microsoft patches and deploy them. Which Microsoft patches? We're going to schedule this to run every Patch Tuesday. So let's do it Patch Tuesday plus 2 days. So 2 days after Patch Tuesday, this job will kick in, deploy the latest Microsoft patches into production. Now I'm going to cancel it, but I'm going to create another job. So let me create another job. And let's call it Patch Tuesday production. What I'm going to do here, I'm actually going to target all my other devices. So that's my production environment. Okay. So here you go. This is a tag that represents my production environment. The trick here is to connect those two jobs. So let me just select something here and I'll explain in a second. So I'm connecting this job to the previous job and I'm scheduling this job. That's the trick. I'm scheduling to run, let's say, 8 days or 7 days after the first one. So let's explain what I did. I created two jobs. One that will run 2 days after Patch Tuesday, will find the latest Patch Tuesday patches and deploy them to a test environment. 7 days after, this job will kick in. It will use the same patches that we have tested before. Remember, I linked this job to the previous one. So it will use the same patches that I used before and deploy them to production. Now, 95% of the time, there's no problem with Patch Tuesday. I will say even 99% of the time, but let's use 95% of the time, there's no problem with Patch Tuesday. So this automation will just work. 2 days after, we're going to run the tests. 7 days after, automatically, zero intervention from anybody. We're going to deploy everything to production. So I don't touch anything. Everything goes all the way to production. In the rare cases where there's actually a problem, I will catch the problem 2 days after Patch Tuesday using the first job. The first job will be deployed to the test environment, and then I will flag the problem, and then I can stop the second job. Okay, that's really important because I only intervene for the rare cases when there is a problem. Of course, you can use the solution to go everything manually and do all these steps manually, but I'm just showing you a different way that can make things a little bit easier. So again, honoring the best practices and honoring the fact that security and IT teams are different, we can build this in a way that IT can actually be the one that actually deploys the patch and security are the one that actually read and build the vulnerabilities to patch. And to illustrate that even more, let me go back to our VMDR. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to run a prioritization report. And that goes back to what we discussed about the importance of prioritization. So I'm running a risk prioritization report from a security perspective to find top vulnerabilities that I would like to address. And you can see here, the report is rendered, but you can see here this vulnerability is first one, from June 2021. So remember, this is a very old vulnerability. It has a QDS score, so the true risk is 200. This is something I really want to patch. Now remember, we said the vulnerability doesn't equal a patch, and remember what we talked about mapping. Because the vulnerability is not equal a patch, if we want our IT to go ahead and patch this thing, they need to do the research and figure out what to do. And we also talked about the importance of let the product do the work for you. So let's see how the product does the work for us. If I want to patch this vulnerability, I'm creating a job for my IT team. Again, this is not a job that I'm going to run. This is a job that IT team is going to run. And a job is a way to deploy patches. And what you can see here, IT can test it, deploy it in the right time, in the right when they want to deploy it. But what's important here, you remember I've selected the vulnerability from 2021. You can see that actually there are 5 patches in this environment that are required to solve this vulnerability. And you don't need to deploy the 2021s. Actually, you need to deploy the latest Patch Tuesday one, the July 9th, 2024. And we did it for you. Everything is ready here. Everything is ready to go. So now your IT team can come here. Everything is ready for them. They don't have to package anything. They can schedule it to start it when they want it to start. They can set their maintenance window, the patch windows. They can run order tests. They can do everything that they want, and their job is. But they don't have to spend time doing all the research. As I said, let the product do it for you. Okay, everybody. So thanks for the demo. This was a quick demo. We can, of course, show you in more details if you just contact us. I want to end this section by just saying our patch solution, we've been selling it for the last about 4 years. We have thousands of customers. We have deployed tens of millions of patches, solved even more than tens of millions of vulnerabilities for our customers. We saw 25% reduction in internet-facing patch assets that have been patched with us, and we see amazing statistics. So we're really, really excited about this product, and we really hope that you give it a try, or if you have it, you can expand and use it as much as possible, because we do believe the end result, you'll be able to reduce a lot of risk. And with that, that's conclude my first part, but I'm now actually really, really excited to talk about the next part, which is how can we help you when there's no patch or a patch is not the answer. And I'm very excited to announce a new offering that we're going to release, and we will demo it in Black Hat. And I'm really, really happy about this. And I know my CEO talked about it before and started talking about it and introduced it before, but this is our next step in helping you remediate risk. Remember, the Qualys journey started by building this patch management solution. Now we're adding functionality on top of it to make sure that you can actually address all type of vulnerability using different methods. And that is the core here. So why do we need it? In some cases, there are vulnerability without a patch. Very simple, right? There are vulnerability that there's simply no patch for it. For example, a vulnerability that you need to solve with a configuration change. Think about the SMB 1.0. You need just to disable it or do those kind of things. There are end-of-life software that has vulnerability, cannot be patched. You need to either uninstall it or upgrade it to a later version. And many, many different other type of vulnerability, there's just no patch for it. Another main reason that we saw many of our customers talk to us about is there's a chance, or there's a fear that if I deploy a patch to a production environment, something may fail. The production environment may fail. I'm going to experience downtime or an outage. And usually when you deploy patch, rollback is really, really tricky. It usually doesn't work well. So IT are reluctant to deploy patches to different type of business application because of the fear of an outage. And so it's common and known, and usually takes them a lot of time until they can have find the maintenance window and actually deploy those patches. And I bet everybody here on the call experienced this at least once. So in order to address this, because there's still risk, right? If the fact that there's a risk, operational risk of deploying the patch, it doesn't mean there's no risk from the bad guy exploiting this vulnerability. So we have to provide a solution or mitigate it or find somehow to mitigate this risk without deploying the patch. And that's a core thing that you see us delivering. Another example, 0 days. In many 0 days, the vendor doesn't release a patch immediately. It takes some time until the patch is there. And there are other mitigation or other tricks that you can do to minimize the risk. We need to address those. Those are still things that we have to address. And in some cases, mitigation just makes more sense. There's no reason to deploy a patch because maybe we have an old version of OS. We just want to make sure some mitigation to minimize the risk without deploying the patch. So those are just few examples why patch may not be the answer. What happened with all those cases? When there's no patch, remember we talked about communicate between the security team that find a vulnerability and what patch IT needs to deploy. We talked about this. This is a challenge by itself. When we talk about no patch, the challenge is doubles, because if there's simply no patch, somebody needs to do the research and figure out what are their, how do I solve the vulnerability? If there's no solution for the vulnerability, or a patch can be deployed, but from a risk perspective, operational risk perspective, the IT doesn't allow you to deploy the patch right now, somebody needs to do the risk and figure out what alternatives, what are the mitigation or compensating control you can deploy to remove the risk. And at the end of the day, all those different solutions require different tools. So IT need to figure out, I have this tool, I don't have this tool, how do I deploy it efficiently? What can happen if I don't deploy it efficiently? And you know what worse? Even if you deploy all those mitigations in place, most tools will still tell you you're still vulnerable, because those tools are not aware that a mitigation is there. So your vulnerability is still flagged as vulnerable, and then you have to provide excuses or some remarks to your bosses why it's actually mitigated. So this is a big problem. And with this True Risk Eliminate, we are here to solve hopefully all those problems. To give you this one tool that is fully integrated with patch. So it's not a different tool. It's one tool that allows you to look at the problem from one set of a lens, and allow you to figure out what do I need to do to fix this vulnerability, either by deploying a patch or applying any other mitigation tools to eliminate the risk. And of course, once you apply the patch or apply the mitigation, everything will be reflected back in your VMDR. So you will know this thing has been mitigated. It's still active. We didn't fix the patch if we deploy alternatives, but it is mitigated because the risk is much, much lower if exists at all. So what is True Risk Eliminate? What is this new solution that we are basically offering? So think about True Risk Eliminate as your one tool to help you reduce risk. And it will include a few different components that can be used with IT and security teams together. Again, remember, we always break the responsibility. It will still be the same case. But this big set of solution, this one solution will include a patch management component. This is what we discussed in the previous section. Will include non-patch mitigation. So we'll allow you to remediate vulnerability that do not have a patch. So we are building a catalog, and we will release a catalog that maps vulnerabilities that don't have a patch to what you need to do to fix it, and you use our product to do that. So everything is packaged and ready for you. If you need to make the registry key change, we will tell you what you need to do, and we will do it for you. Of course, IT will be the one, or the remediation team will be the one that actually deploy and make those changes. And as important, we will also provide you the alternative to patch. So our threat research team is researching all those critical vulnerabilities out there, and they're actually exploiting them. And they're figuring out what can we do to mitigate the risk of those vulnerabilities if somebody or if our customers do not want to install a patch. What are the alternatives? And they provide scripts and other technology to allow you to mitigate the risk without deploying the patch. So it's based on a lot of research, a lot of testing to make sure you have everything ready for you, so you don't have to do it yourself. Okay? And then last option is isolate. In case, worst case scenario, you want to take this device after the network, because that will, of course, mitigate the risk. You'll be able to do it directly from the solution. Of course, when you take the device out of the network, you can still control it from our console only, but you cannot do anything else on the device. So that's last resort, but it's really, really effective way to mitigate risk. And with that, what I would like to do is give you a quick peek of how it's going to look like. Now, this is just a quick demo. We are going to introduce a full demo in Black Hat in our booth. So you're all welcome to join us in Black Hat in our booth. And we're going to release this product later in this quarter. So you'll be able to use it. And let's go and quickly jump to the demo. Okay, so what do we see here? Let's start from the beginning. So when we talked about the demo, remember we have vulnerabilities that we want to solve. So up until now, we were able to say, here's a vulnerability, show me the patches, let's go ahead and deploy the patches. But let's take a look at this first vulnerability, this Microsoft Outlook update from this February. You can see immediately there are actually two options for you. Either elimination, so that's patches, there's a patch available for you, or there are two mitigation options that you can use to actually remediate this risk. So every vulnerability inside your VMDR, so your security team can immediately see what action they can take to fix it. Basically understand how hard it is. So everything is in your regular view, in your regular workflow, inside your VMDR console vulnerabilities. So let's say we want to fix this one. We want to go ahead and mitigate the risk on this Outlook security update. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go here and I'm going to go to my elimination. So this is a new model. If you guys understand or know patch management, this will be part of patch management. It will be fully integrated into your patch management solution. So you can, it's one workflow if you have patch management, but the beauty here, you don't need to buy patch management to get it. You can, if you guys have a different patch management and you only want this type of solution, you can still use it. Okay, so you can decide what to enable. And of course, there's different pricing about this, but you can choose either to use the entire solution or just use a portion of the solution. It's up to you what works for you. But what's important here, you can see I have the vulnerability, this Outlook vulnerability here. I can see on what asset it is. And you can see the two options. Either I deploy this patch or I make this registry key change. I can click on it and it tells me here is the analysis of our research team and here's the mitigation strategy. What you can do, in this case, it's just a registry key change to disable some dynamic content. What we are doing with this mitigation. And you can see there are more actually. So in this case, this is the registry key change that we just talked about. And then there is device isolation, which is another option you can take. Our research team may find 5 different ways to mitigate the same vulnerabilities, so you'll be able to choose. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to create a mitigation job. And this mitigation job will go ahead, target this one asset. Of course, you can test before you go to production, as we already said. You can choose the right mitigation from you, this the one that we've talked about, and schedule it, provide some notification to the user if needed, and so forth, and you can just go ahead and deploy it. Once you deploy it, and again, probably your IT or remediation team will go through this process and deploy it. Once you deploy it, IT or remediation can monitor everything. As I said, everything is fully integrated with patch, so it's the same experience, the same way to manage things, but you can do it without patch. So you don't have to, but if you own patch, it will be easier. You have everything in one console. So you can track it, you can figure out, all the technical operation stuff will be part of it. But what's more important, if you go back to your VM, okay, vulnerability management, you can see here, the first one, it is now mitigated. Okay, it's still there. We didn't solve the vulnerability, we didn't deploy the patch. It's still there. You can see there's patch available, but there's no mitigation anymore because we applied the mitigation. And our system will make sure the mitigation is always applied, okay? And it is marked as mitigated as long as we find this mitigation in place. So now this mitigation status is part of your reporting. It's part of your VMDR ecosystem. Really important, really beneficial. And with that, let me go back to our demo. So to conclude, we've talked about very, very important things. On our big eliminate process, so we started with just patch management, we expanded it now, we are expanding it to do much more. Not just patch, everything that you need to do to remediate the risk. Either it's a configuration change, mitigation control, compensation control, all those things are part of our solution. We will give it to you, we'll help you, first of all, prioritize. Then we'll help you automate, and then map the relevant option, what I just talked about, right? Not only patches, but also configuration change, also mitigation, all the options so you can choose the best option for you. And if you need to test and deploy, and of course, roll back. Everything from one console, from one view, with a very distinct separation between IT and security when you need it. So IT can do whatever they're responsible for, deploying the patch, rollback, all those things, and security is responsible for the prioritization and deciding what to do. Everything built into the product. If you want to sign up for this, product to be the first to know about it, please take a picture of that QR code. You can just follow the link. There's a simple form you can fill, and we will get back to you to show you, and we can do a demo. And of course, we will be in our booth in the Black Hat. We will do a more in-depth demo, okay, of the capabilities. So you'll be able to talk to us, ask a more detailed question. We'll be happy to answer. Of course, you can set a call with your TAM. I'll be happy to jump on any call and we can discuss this in further details. And with that, I would like to thank everybody.